This video is going to go over covering how to measure fillet welds. We'll cover all the basics here. This is a practice piece from one of the classes. Just pulled this over to use for demonstration purposes. Multi-pass fillet weld. So the leg length for fillet welds is going to be the distance from this component moving vertically up this component, and then also from the vertical piece moving out along this plane of this component. Hold that on the side there. So going from the root up and the root, as we look at it, over to the right in that dimension. And then your throat thickness is going to be dimensioned from that root in the corner, right down here, up to a line that's going to go from that root out to the face of the weld. That's going to be your throat. You got leg length, two of them, and then your throat. You can see this weld is essentially flat, right? Meaning it's not convex or dished in and concave. So for this demo, we're going to say that if you had a fillet size that was 7/16, you're going to grab your fillet gauge. Here's a typical one. And you're simply going to place the bottom edge of this tool on that lower component, and you're going to measure the top toe of that weld and make sure that this face, this corner right here on this tool, hits the weld before it hits the other component. And then you know your leg length is up to size. You're just going to run that down your weld. This one's hitting all the way down. Now we're going to go from the other direction, coming down and making sure, same thing, that it's hitting the weld before it hits this other component. If that spatter is getting in your way, if you have any, you're going to want to remove that so you can measure. On that spatter, all these little dots you're seeing up here is spray from the welding process. That is also typically going to have an allowance depending on whatever code you're welding to. So make sure you pay attention to that. Definitely remove it if it's interfering with your measurement. So we know we've got the 7/16 leg length on both sides. Now to measure the throat. This piece of the tool, remember we were saying that weld look essentially flat. That's what we're looking for. This is going to let you know if that throat thickness is what it needs to be. So with this one, same thing. You're going to kind of flip it on edge here, run it up to your weld. I'll try and move this over. You want to make sure that the gauge is hitting the weld before hitting the other component. So you know your throat thickness is where it needs to be. This one's looking good. And then go from the other side. Clearly hitting the weld before the other component. Our throat thickness is good. I'm going to switch this and say that it's now a 1/2 inch fillet that you're supposed to be depositing here. So we got a 1/2 inch gauge. We're going to run that over. Now we're seeing that the gauge is just hitting the toe of that weld. Yeah, now it's hitting the base material right at the edge of the toe. And right here, you'll see it clearly hitting the base material before it hits the fillet weld. So this would be undersized if we were shooting for a 1/2 inch. So then at that point, you'd have to address this with depositing more weld. And then of course, same thing like last time, you would check both directions. Looks like you have it on the bottom component. It's just the upper vertical piece that it's missing. And then the same thing with the throat if you're checking that with the 1/2 inch. Since we have this, there's a little spot right here I'm going to talk about. So I know we were measuring for fillet leg length and fillet size and throat thickness, but since it's here, we'll point out what could be a sharp irregularity or something at this inside the face of the weld here that potentially is less than 90 degrees where it comes together. So we're going to take a scale, the corner of a scale. You're going to place it in there and you're going to see if it touches the bottom of that dimple, I'll call it, or if it makes a condition where you can see light underneath the corner. If you can see light underneath the corner, you know that that angle that this bead comes into this bead makes a point that's less than 90 degrees. Then you would have a defect right there, or discontinuity of a sharp irregularity. So you'd have to address that, whether it's opening it up, making sure you find the bottom, possibly, clear that, open it up, and then depending on how far you had to go to open it up, if you violate anything else, you might have to deposit some more filling material there and smooth it out. You can get a flashlight from the back side and shine that light to help you look for that light coming down through the corner. If the ambient light isn't good enough, probably advise that you do use a flashlight just to make sure you can see in there. This one's fine, but back on the fillets, pretty straightforward on measuring fillets. You can pick up your gauges. They usually come in a set. They cover most standard sizes that would be called out on a print, and that's how you measure a fillet. Hope you got something out of the video, and you can look for more videos on other workmanship attributes on our website. As you're measuring your fillet, if there's any spatter that's interfering with you measuring, go ahead and remove that. Spatter is all these little droplets you see kind of bounced out of the puddle here as you're welding. Depending on each process, some of them tend to have more or less spatter than others. But if your code that you're welding to has an allowance, make sure you measure it and see if it is within those specs, whether it's by size or by amount. But definitely, if it's going to interfere with your measuring, you're going to have to remove that anyways.